And it's still morning for us. I hope it's morning for you too. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Awesome. You know, with the amount of snow that we have in Krakow today, it just makes me happy.
And we are happy to have you. And we really want to be optimistic in this part of the conversation to talk about success stories. The keyword here is flavorful. So sometimes the flavor comes from unexpected places. The real impact comes from what you could see as marginal or small or with very little impact potential. May we kindly ask you to share a success story in this category, so to say, where the impact is counterintuitive, perhaps? Again,
I can probably start if that's okay with you, Jasmine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mine is more than a success story in itself. For me, it's more of a reflection. I have been a sponsor for inclusion and diversity for Accenture already for a few years, and I'm someone that is always following and participating in the LGBT marches every year. And this year was a very special one for me as well, because we were able to cover more cities. But so in this past May, I had just a moment of reflection on something that I had probably never thought about. I was always supporting I&D in different aspects, but never looking for the impact, but never really realizing what this meant for me as well. So after quite a few kilometers walked, I was in Gdansk, and it was a very nice realization. I was walking with a lot of local people, and of course being surrounded by many people that were also following me from city to city. And this actually just gave me the aha moment where I realized, the amount of impact that we have as individuals when we do something. It is easier to do nothing. And a lot of people were asking me, well, why are you in every march? Why are you going place to place? And for me, the most important thing is about understanding why we do things and what is the impact that we have. And in this case, I felt that by marching in every single city, we were able to bring more people together, and we were giving them the space to be able to march with us, to support others, to be there for each other. And I think this is how the support chain starts, right? We start small and we keep making the impact bigger. And of course, now I have more excitement about the next coming marches, that we need to do more and we need to have more people together, because this is important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
And I would, yes. So the success story I was thinking about is actually how we have managed to find the values within our people. Because, normally when you talk about those things, it might be on a corporate level, and it might be, you have all of those fancy words on the walls when you come into a company. But what happens when you actually take them off the wall and incorporate them into yourselves? So what we have been doing, and what has been very successful, is actually to ask people, what is the freedom to be for you? Because we talk a lot about, bringing your authentic self to work. But for us, asking people, what is the freedom to be for you? And of course, that is echoing our company purpose, the freedom to move. But what is interesting is that the freedom to be, you would think that it would mean a lot of different things. But what I've discovered doing this around the globe with our different teams and departments is that it's actually a lot about being seen, and it's a lot about being heard, and moving from talking about the speak up culture that is very dear to us into actually talking about a listen up culture where people get to be listened to. And that's also how you can make it into very concrete actions. So success stories is actually how to find ways to talk to each other in a good way. Active listening, reflective listening has become part of our DNA during the last year.
There are clearly sometimes in the experience of specific companies what they call hidden gems of impact, some small initiatives that grow into much larger ones and create this positive impact. How do you make sure that this recipe evolves in the right direction and that you don't grow complacent at some point, but instead are carefully listening to your organization, watching what is happening? How do you do that?
Then I can start.
Yeah, please,
So
please.
I think, yes. So I think that for us, the transition was actually to not being complacent is actually to bring it to inclusion rather than talk about diversity. Because when it becomes relevant to each and every one of us, then it becomes a real thing, right? So when we change the conversation from diversity into inclusion, we actually changed it from the head to the heart, and that was really when the interest and the conversation started to rolling by themselves. So we use storytelling a lot as one hidden gem to just also find all of those different perspectives on how to go about it and evolve it and continue to talk about it from different angles.
Well, I would like to mention that for us in Accenture, one of the most important things is about leading by example, living our values and definitely not compromising on them, providing equal opportunities, making sure that we live and respect every single day what we do. And of course, embrace our differences, right? Open mind, making sure that we value our strengths rather than focusing on the things that could be better. And I think probably one of the most important things for me personally is the passion. We need to believe in what we're doing. We need to be able to make it contagious for others on why we're doing this and why it is important and why is every single individual's responsibility to do this. This, for me, is key to have a very successful IND program, really.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from the audience. Does something like a golden recipe for successful D&I actions exist, or are we doomed to our own experiments in the kitchen, so to say?
I mean, I can say that diversity tells it already on its own, right? I don't think that there is a golden recipe. We need to adapt and to also see the audience that we have, right? We need to talk to the audience that we're addressing, and we need to make sure that we adapt, we're flexible into what are the things that need to be done differently. I mean, one of the examples that I can make is, for example, in Accenture, we have a highly international environment. We have more than 95 nationalities just in our Poland offices. So that already tells you, we can try to bring a strategy that could be as generic as possible for our more than 700,000 employees worldwide. But at the end, what we need to tailor, it needs to be done in-house. So at the end, in my view, I don't think that there is a golden recipe. It's something that we need to work on and tailor until we are getting to the right place in terms of the spices in our recipe.
Jessica, with a super-sized organization like that globally, when you talk about tailoring the recipe, it almost sounds like a contradiction in terms, because it's so large that even to imagine how you go about it is a challenge in its own right. But let me ask this, nevertheless. How do you tailor the D&I experience? How do you keep improving it on the go? And let's try and look into this answer in as tangible, as instrument or process-driven way as we can. How do you go about it? You come to work and you do what?
Well, first of all, you need to listen to see what is happening around, where the challenges are present, where are the things that we need to focus on. So, for example, we have the way that we tailor it within Accenture Poland. I can tell you that sometimes we are focusing more in the terms of the cultural side. On the other,
Jessica, let me ask you this way. What's your favorite listening tool within the organization? How do you listen to a large organization like that? How do you go about it?
Well, there is nothing better than the human touch. We need to talk to people in person. We need to sit next to each other and talk and listen and figure out what are the things that we need to work on. To me, coming back to the office has been a blessing after so long that we were working from home. I was missing that human touch, and I think that's the best way that you can find out what are the things that you need to work on by being close to people.
Fair enough.
And I
Jasmine.
can only agree with that, yes, because I would also like to just jump in.
Volvo
on
Cars
this one.
is no small brand, so I'm sure you share the same challenges here.
Yes.
How do you listen?
I mean, there are so... Yes, and I agree with Jessica that, I mean, the human touch is, of course, so important. And I was so happy to see the film about the ERGs just before we went on, because our employee resource groups are, of course, a very important part of the listening for us. But also we have our employee engagement surveys, we have exit interviews. Everything happens in interaction between people. But then I also would like to just highlight that storytelling and the stories that you share is one really important part, but also combining that with being a bit data informed, because sometimes you can also be a bit biased. If you hear certain stories and you think, oh, that must be the truth, then combining that with actually the data information is really important, so that you are doing the right things. And as you also said, I mean, we are in so many different regions and countries around the globe. So actually also realizing that the key elements like inclusion and trust might actually mean different things. And how do we communicate about that? How do we make sure that we still feel the same feeling, that we feel belonging to the cause?
So someone who is completely, pardon the expression, green in the department of D&I conversation would imagine that in a large organization, the only way you can go about it, in addition to local conversations, person to person, would be to have a proper survey investigating those topics within the organization that matter to your organization, and just keep updating it. So is it the way it's happening in large organizations like yours? In both cases, you keep perfecting the questionnaires, the surveys, the tools of listening, so to say?
Well, I can say for Accenture, indeed, that is the case. And indeed, we do have different levels of getting this information. Because, of course, we have, in such a big organization, we cannot do just one big survey and assume that everything is fine, or that those results are what the actions need to be implemented. But at the end, what we do is we start with smaller groups, bigger groups, and of course we start also conferring into what are the things that are the common topics, what are the things that may be different per location, and of course that's where the tailoring starts, right? That's where we need to make sure that we are also focusing on the right topics in the right locations and not generalizing, because of course having one strategy for a big organization, it definitely, in the case of inclusion and diversity, there is a layer where you can do this, but you need to start digging and peeling underneath to be able to have the right approach.
Fair enough.
Can you see the question that just
I can see
the third one?
We have the third one is interesting. The second one is interesting. Let's share both of them now. If the ultimate goal of DEI is behavior change, how are you measuring that? How do you measure behavior change in the first place? And next one, what if people don't want to listen to us? They don't engage, they don't participate. Then what?
So good questions. I can start with the first one on the measuring, because we've actually started measuring inclusion in an inclusion index, and this is something that we are we haven't done for such a long time. But what we are actually looking into is exactly about the behavioral. So in our engagement survey, we are looking at the two questions: speak my mind, and also respectful treatment, because that is also where we can see that we can actually, if we are treating each other in a good way, if we are behaving according to our company values, then that will create that feeling of that you can actually speak up without fear of negative consequences, and that you are feeling respectfully treated at work. So having those as two anchor points to follow, and also, of course, then with all of the comments. I just want to say that adding on extra surveys might also kind of be contradictory sometimes, because people are a bit survey fatigue. I don't know how it is in most companies, but I think that's something that we can all agree on. So surveys are great, but they also need to be combined with a lot of trust for the organization, and not too many.
And in fact, it doesn't, our job doesn't end on the survey, right? It's about communicating the results, like talking about whatever the survey revealed, and that's probably even more challenging. So
yeah, processing all that information
absolutely
matters a lot. Jessica, anything you would like to add? Because that's our very last minute. So yours will be the closing statement.
Oh, well, that's exciting. Well, I think probably the most, I definitely agree with what Jasmine was mentioning about the behavior and how do we measure, how do we get to people? And of course, one of the important things that I see in what you were mentioning about the surveys is indeed not just about collecting the information, but doing something with it. Because there is no point on keep running the survey every 3 months, every 6 months, if we're not taking action. So one important thing is about communication. Talk about the elephant in the room. What is happening in an organization? What works? What doesn't work? And how together we're going to be working towards a better environment for the greatest good.
I wish we had more time to continue with this conversation, exploring the nuance of the data and how we go about it. But we need to say thank you for joining this edition of the conference. Jessica Rodriguez Puente, Accenture, and Jasmine Aronson El Kashani, Volvo Cars. Thank you so very much for joining us today.